Buongiorno a tutti, sono Tiziana Lorenzetti e vi do il benvenuto a questa conferenza online organizzata dall'Istituto Internazionale di Studi Sud-Asiatici ISAS con il patrocinio dell'ambasciata indiana nell'ambito dello Shri Jan Festival, un festival che vede uniti sia l'India che l'Italia. Infatti Bene, e in questo momento difficile per l'India, che sta lottando contro la diffusione del Covid, e quindi il nostro pensiero va a tutti gli amici indiani e tutti i cittadini dell'India, vi parliamo di un'arte indiana che è molto famosa in tutto il mondo, la danza. Anzi, si dovrebbe parlare delle danze indiane, perché la danza classica indiana si articola in vari stili, fra cui i più popolari sono il Bharatanatyam, il Kathak, l'Odissi, il Kathakali, ma ce ne sono anche molti altri. E queste danze, così come le conosciamo noi, presero forma all'inizio del Novecento, sebbene si riferissero anche a delle danze tradizionali antiche. Ad esempio, il Bharatanatyam affonda le sue radici nell'arte delle danzatrici templari del sud dell'India, le Devadasi. Così questi stili da una parte si rifanno alle antiche tradizioni, dall'altra però subirono anche l'influenza dell'ambiente internazionale in cui si andava sviluppando la cultura dell'India del XX secolo. E oggi in particolare parliamo di una danzatrice, la leggendaria Rukmini Devi, che contribuì a trasformare l'arte delle Devadasi nello stile Bharatanatyam. E ce ne parla una personalità di spicco della cultura indiana e della danza, Lakshmi Vishwanathan, da Chennai, e introdurrà e la intervisterà brevemente Rosella Fanelli, danzatrice di Kathak, coreografa, direttrice della Scuola Kathak Italia. Ecco, io quindi vi ringrazio, vi saluto e lascio la parola alle due artiste e alle due danzatrici. Siamo in collegamento con Rosella Fanelli. Buongiorno Rosella.
Benvenuta. Buongiorno Tiziana, buongiorno a tutti i nostri ascoltatori. Sono qui a presentare un artista eccezionale nel campo della danza Bharatanatyam, Lakshmi Vishwanathan. Pur essendo io una performer di Kathak, ho il piacere di incontrare questa artista perché mi ricorda anche alcune pregresse interazioni che ho avuto con esponenti dello stile Bharatanatyam, con Indrani Raman, che purtroppo non c'è più, ma grazie a lei sono potuta andare in America e partecipare ad una delle esperienze più importanti della mia vita, insieme ad altri esperti nel campo delle danze classiche indiane, come Anita Ratnan o anche Sivi Chandrasekhar. Bene, parliamo ora della nostra ospite, Lakshmi Vishwanathan. È un esponente dello stile Bharatanatyam del genere Tanjavur, allieva principale del guru Kanjivaram Yellappa Pillai. Ha intrapreso insieme alla danza lo studio della musica carnatica, divenendo un'esperta vocalista. Questi elementi integrati insieme hanno conferito una dimensione unica alla sua danza, definita come musica visiva. Si è esibita nei maggiori festival di danza in India e all'estero ed è stata definita dalla critica internazionale eclettica. Lakshmi Vishwanathan, attraverso le sue coreografie evocative, fa giungere al suo pubblico un'amalgama speciale di intelletto, innovazione e pose attraenti. Enorme anche il suo contributo come mentore e maestra per molti allievi di Bharatanatyam. Recipiente di prestigiosi premi e riconoscimenti, tra cui quello della Sangeet Natak Academy, considerato una delle più prestigiose onorificenze per un artista in India. Inoltre il premio Naritya Kalanidhi, conferitole dalla Music Academy di Madras. Si è cimentata anche nella scrittura e dotata di notevole lungimiranza, è autrice di libri tra cui Bharatanatyam, The Tamil Heritage, Woman of Pride, The Devadasi Heritage, Kapaliswara Temple. Protagonista del bellissimo documentario The Poetry of Dance, commissionato dal Festival dell'India, che vi invito a seguire su YouTube. Attualmente Lakshmi Vishwanathan ricopre il ruolo di editor per il Kalakshetra Journal. Lakshmi è un'artista molto rispettata. Per lei la danza è stata come il suo respiro ed è estremamente appagata dalla sua brillante carriera. Dice di lei stessa: quando mi guardo indietro sono molto felice di aver intrapreso la carriera di danzatrice classica. Mi ha fatto diventare la persona che sono oggi. Orgogliosa di far parte anche di quel trend di innovazioni e di fermenti che si è andato delineando durante le battaglie per l'indipendenza dal dominio britannico, quando l'India stava cercando la sua identità perduta. Il fermento culturale di questo movimento, chiamato Renaissance of Indian Classical Dance, ha avuto un grande impatto quasi su tutti gli stili di danza classica, soprattutto dal punto di vista della presentazione. Ed è proprio a proposito di questo che oggi Lakshmi Ji ci parlerà di un grande personaggio, di una grande donna che ha lasciato veramente un segno non solo nella danza, ma anche in tanti ambiti, quello sociale, culturale e anche politico. Sto parlando di Rukmini Devi Arundel. Quindi non ci resta che collegarci con Chennai e invitare la nostra ospite, Lakshmi Vishwanathan. Namaste.
The legendary Rukmini Devi Arundel. She created literally a revolution in Indian dance, that is Bharatanatyam, the dance of South India. She was a leap year child. She was born on the 29th of February in the year 1904. And she lived a long life until 1986. But what was remarkable was that she was born into a traditional Brahmin family, born in Madurai, the temple city. And her father, after retiring from government service, became interested in the Theosophical movement. And the Theosophical Society was founded here in Madras, not far from where I live, in fact. And he moved his family there, right outside that campus, and became a regular visitor, interacting with the Theosophists. And so his whole family was involved with all the people in the Theosophical Society. And Rukmini Devi, as a teenager, learned a lot of things with her interaction with people in the Theosophical Society. She was a very young girl wearing a sari, a very simple looking girl. In the Theosophical Society, there were a number of people who were willing to teach English to these young girls, because Rukmini Devi came from a large family, brothers and sisters, and something very unusual happened, and that was the fact that when she was just about 17 years old, she married Bishop Arundel, because in those days, it was not at all common for a Brahmin girl to marry a foreigner. But the family didn't object, because they knew Bishop Arundel was a charming man, only about a little over 20 years older than Rukmini Devi. But it was a wonderful combination because he was an educationist, a great orator, and he traveled with her all over the world. What happened really to Rukmini Devi as a young girl was the fact that Annie Besant was very fond of her. And she encouraged her so much that when the famous philosopher J. Krishnamurti decided to leave the Theosophical Society, Annie Besant thought that Rukmini Devi will now take over and become the world mother. So by ship, Rukmini Devi and her husband traveled to many countries, and it was an education for her. In fact, what happened was when she saw a performance of the great Pavlova in Bombay, she was so fascinated because she had never seen dance on a stage before. And she felt that she was in another world. And everything that happened to her in her early life was almost like a miracle. They went on a ship from Bombay to Australia, and guess who was on the same boat? It was Pavlova herself. So Rukmini Devi befriended Pavlova and told her, I would love to learn your dance, that is ballet. Pavlova was very nice to her. She asked her student, Cleo Noddy, to teach Rukmini Devi ballet. So she took some lessons for a short while. There are photographs of her in a ballerina's dress, and she enjoyed the fact that she could really use her body to express a story, do something on the stage. But Pavlova actually was very keen that such a charming girl like Rukmini Devi should go back to her roots and learn the dance of her own country. So that is how Rukmini Devi decided, let me explore my own culture. And it was in the year 1933 or so that for the first time she saw two young Devadasi girls dancing in the music academy in Madras. She had never seen this before. She felt something for this art. She felt that there was something unique about it, and she wanted to immediately learn. But you know, in those days, it was only the Devadasis who were allowed to dance in public places and also in temples. It was unheard of that a woman of high society would want to learn this dance. But Rukmini Devi had a great vision, and she was encouraged by her husband. He wanted to start an international school where all the arts would come together. So he felt that Rukmini Devi, who already knew music, would do well as a dancer. He encouraged her. And she started in the beginning, even before she learned dance, she tried to do some theatrical performances just for the theosophists in the campus. And they all helped her. You know, she didn't have to worry about makeup or costumes. In fact, later on, an Italian lady designed all her costumes. Coming back to her seeking to learn Bharatanatyam, that was a bit of an adventure. She learned from one of the last Devadasis of the Mylapore temple of Madras. But in a short while, she realized that she needed a really important, well-known guru to teach her. So she approached the most famous guru, Pandanallur Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai, and learned the basics of Bharatanatyam from him. And very soon, she gave her first performance in 1935 during the Theosophical Society's annual convention. They knew that she was an amateur dancer, but they had also not seen any of this dance. So when they looked at her in a beautiful costume with beautiful jewelry, they felt that it was some sort of a creature who had landed in their midst from some celestial region which they had never seen before. Rukmini Devi was always very, very keen that she should start a school. Now, people had been learning from gurus on a one-to-one basis in the villages, or in the guru's house, 2 or 3 young dancers would learn. But Rukmini Devi had gone to London. She had seen how the ballet was taught in schools and how there was a group of people dancing on a huge stage. So some people, in fact, when she started her school and started teaching many people, they called her the Dame Ninette de Valois of India. She started the school in which many arts were taught at the same time: music, Sanskrit, languages, painting, sculpture. So the vision of Rukmini Devi and Bishop Arundel came to fruition in a beautiful way right there inside the Theosophical Society. And all the members who came for the annual conference, they showered praise on her. But Rukmini Devi was not satisfied with just a small school with a handful of students under a banyan tree. She wanted to make it a very big school. So she got all the theosophists to donate for her to make a school. And in the beginning, it was all under thatched roofs, like a village. And she was very smart. What was revolutionary about her was, in the olden days, the guru was the musician. In his house, all the musicians lived and they accompanied the dance when it was performed, either in a temple or a wedding or any occasion in the villages. But she wanted the help of very big scholars. She took the help of very important people who knew Sanskrit and pundits of music, and she brought them all inside the campus. So the tradition of Bharatanatyam coming from the village to the town, to the city of Madras, was something phenomenal in the form of an academy of dance. It was a campus where people stayed together. In a hostel, the students were always together, and Rukmini Devi was very good in running the school as a very strict disciplinarian and also a very generous person, because she treated all the students as if they were her children. Now, she didn't have any children of her own, but she felt these children had come to learn all about Indian culture. So she taught them many things that they didn't know before. Secondly, she was not merely interested in dance. She felt, because this was India's fight for independence from England, from Britain, and Annie Besant was one of the freedom fighters. So this was the era when everybody felt that they should have pride in their own heritage. So Rukmini Devi wanted the craftspeople also to come and teach the students painting, sculpture, and then she loved the hand-woven silks and cottons and the block-printed vegetable dyes. So she started all these things within the campus. Now, this was something very unusual. That is why everybody felt that she was a pioneer, because in the ancient texts of India, it always said that if you want to learn dance, you should know music. If you are good in music, you will appreciate painting. If you know painting, you should appreciate sculpture. So she brought all the arts together. Then she slowly developed some ideas. She went to the villages looking for something that might inspire her to involve her students. See, up till then, there were very few what was known as ensemble dance programs. The Devadasis used to perform as a group certain dance dramas which their gurus taught them. And these were all composed for them, and they performed it in the temple or in some festival. They were called Kuravanji. She went to see some of these programs, but she wanted to make it more sophisticated and more aesthetic. She felt that their costumes, the lighting, all of that was not adequate for an international audience, because she was the first one to think about an international audience. The Theosophists came from all over the world, and they stayed for a month in the campus attending lectures. In the evenings, they needed some entertainment. And there was Rukmini Devi producing one show or the other. And she also felt that she should learn more about Indian mythology and the way it was presented in the form of a dance drama. So she went to the villages of Tanjavur and she saw the performances called Bhagavata Mela. Now that was very strange because all the actors were young men. Even the role of the heroine was danced by a young, pretty boy dressed as a woman. Rukmini Devi saw these performances and she felt this kind of a dance drama would be suitable for my school. So she invited those gurus. They came and stayed with her in the school for a few years to teach her students how to present these shows, wearing different costumes and also presenting mythological stories. So this was a very important landmark because up till then, people were seeing these kind of shows in very poor lighting in villages outside the temple. She had the help of international theosophists who were amateurs, but they were very interested in helping her. One of them became a lighting expert. Another one became the stage designer. One more said, I will design all the costumes. But Rukmini Devi guided them. She used only very traditional, beautiful costumes made out of hand-woven silk. Then her own designers from the villages, they came, crafted those crowns, and the jewelry was all antique jewelry. Now we call them antique, but they were made there. In the meantime, she thought, why not I produce a little story from the Ramayana? And she went to a Sanskrit scholar who selected the verses, and she was the first one to produce a dance drama based on the Ramayana. It was just a short dance drama, but it became such a success that subsequently she took the whole of the Ramayana, and every few years she would produce one segment so that the story is carried forward. And during her travels, as she was beginning the Ramayana series, she traveled to Indonesia, to Bali, and she saw how beautifully they produced the Ramayana in their own dance style. She took many ideas from them, and she was also a great innovator because in Bharatanatyam, mostly the technique was taught only to girls. Now, when she had characters being played as Ravana or Rama or Hanuman, she didn't think that girls could do those roles. So she took in male students in her Kalakshetra, trained them to dance not only Bharatanatyam, but she felt for dynamic characters, like, for example, Hanuman or Ravana. She needed more powerful acting and more leaps and twirls on the stage, which were more magnetic in their roles. So she brought in Kathakali gurus from Kerala. A very famous guru, Chandu Panikar, came and worked in Kalakshetra for a number of years, and it became part of the curriculum of the school for boys to learn Kathakali also, so that they would dance those roles. But she modified the Kathakali costume also. You know, the Kathakali has fantastic face masks and very elaborate costumes. She changed it a bit. She had minimal Kathakali costumes for her dance dramas, and these became very popular, and they are performed even to this day in the campus of Kalakshetra during the December season. Rukmini Devi was very particular about music. She herself, when she was young, she learned Carnatic music. So she knew who to employ. She brought the best musicians who were probably in search of a job. She gave them a free house and looked after them in the campus, and they readily composed all the music for her dance dramas. That is why today, when the Kalakshetra dance dramas are performed, people love the music that was all composed in different ragas and made to look as if the whole Ramayana was sung, because that is the tradition in India, where poetry is always either sung or recited. And she used that technique to make her dance dramas landmark events. And she was also a very good writer and speaker. See, before her, dancers never explained their dance in English to anybody. She wrote beautiful introductions to each one of her productions. She analyzed the characters, and also, whenever she was asked to speak, she spoke impeccable English. Now, for a girl who never went to high school, to speak beautiful English, Queen's English, she was taught by Annie Besant, and Bishop Arundel, who was a great orator. So in Madras society, she became a very important person. And she was very smart. She invited high society of Madras, big politicians, statesmen, freedom fighters, to come and see her dance. So originally, people were very skeptical. They said, oh, we will not be able to sit through something like this, we are not used to seeing this. But a famous man who became the first Governor General of Free India, Rajaji, came to see her Ramayana and told her, I was so moved by your performance and your students that I will recommend more people to support you and to come and appreciate what you're doing here. Because this was art of a different kind. And luckily, she started before cinema became the big rage in Tamil Nadu. So her dance dramas were very good entertainment also, because people felt when they went there, it was like seeing the whole story of Rama. She began, choosing other stories and making them into dance dramas. A lot of work went into each production. And until the very end, she believed in hard work. She worked very hard and she produced something new every year. She did the story of Buddha. She took Jayadeva's Gita Govindam, which was translated in many languages all over the world, the story of Krishna. But always she had a certain philosophy in her dance. She felt that if you dress up as Krishna, you should believe in the sanctity of Krishna. Otherwise, just putting on a costume will not give the impression that dance is supposed to give. So she taught these things to her students in a very different way because she had studied the mythology of India and she wanted this to become an art which is globally recognized. Later on, the government of India used to send her and her group to different countries to perform the Ramayana. And she did very well. Wherever she went, people were amazed that there was this kind of performance available to the public in India. And she was very well known for her beautiful Kanjivaram hand-woven saris. She had beautiful jewelry too, which she wore. Basically, she was a very simple woman, a pure vegetarian. In fact, she was the president of what is known as the Vegetarian Congress of India. She was a very big animal rights person. She started the Animal Welfare Board of India. She was a member of parliament. And in fact, the government of India felt that she should be the first woman president of India. But Rukmini Devi said, my work is in art and not in politics. I cannot come to Delhi. I cannot leave my school. It is my work here. So she declined such a big position. But all the same, she was a nationalist, a patriot, and she believed in Indian culture being a universal culture. See, she had the way to explain Indian art to the global audience in a very artistic way and also in a very eloquent way, because her language was very good. And I had the good fortune of meeting her in my young days as a dancer. And later on, I was asked by her to come and help her with the Kalakshetra journal. And later on, in the recent years, I've been the editor of the journal and inviting people from different arts and background of literature, history, archaeology to contribute. So Rukmini Devi, in fact, had a vision which she fulfilled in her life, and her students today are recognized all over the world as very good teachers. Because Rukmini Devi did not think that all her students are going to be prima donnas. She felt that they should learn in order to become more enlightened young women, more cultured, better human beings, lover of animals and nature, and also spread the word of India all over the world. So we can say that among all the artists of India, she was foremost as a global Indian. And today, she is remembered every year in a festival where people pay tribute to her, and her productions are performed again and again. And the school is run in the same way as she was doing it, with new additions, new productions, but the atmosphere continues to be one of aesthetic beauty, peace, and reverence to the culture of India.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Grazie per questa bellissima conferenza che ci ha reso tutti più dentro il mondo della cultura indiana e soprattutto della figura di Rukmini Devi Arundel. E non mi voglio far sfuggire l'occasione di chiedere a questa nostra ospite delle domande che spesso noi ci poniamo di fronte alle danze e soprattutto a come la danza viene concepita nel collegamento con altre forme artistiche, quindi l'integrazione tra danza, musica, teatro, scultura.
You see, the thing about Indian culture, it has always been one of unification. Because geographically, if you see, in ancient India, all the arts came together, either in the temple or in the royal palace of kings. So people who were involved in many arts, whether it was music or dance, painting, sculpture, poetry, all of them lived together and communicated a lot with each other. So those roots have continued even to this day. For example, when students of dance want to study certain techniques of dance, they can always refer to ancient poetry and also to the musical richness of South India, for example, because music is just not a melody alone. It is poetry, it is rhythm. See, dance is full of tala or rhythm. So these things have to be studied together with the dance. They cannot be separated. And thirdly, if you looked at all our sculpture, that is where all the costumes have been inspired, because our sculptors in the ancient days, they knew the dance art, they knew the Natya Shastra. So they were very clever in replicating what is written to the stone sculpture, and some of them, as you know, they look as if they are moving. So these are all inspirations which interact with each other, and it has been going on for centuries, so that even today you find that dancers are very conscious of the fact that you should be related very closely to the music and to the poetry and the sculpture and the painting. After all, painting is color, and dance is like a flower blossoming everywhere.
Yeah, very, very, very nice. In fact, you also are often talking about visual music, right? Visual music. Mi piacerebbe chiedere qualcosa invece su quello che è l'idea della donna, quindi un'idea sull'emancipazione della donna nella società indiana. E questo perché la nostra ospite ha scritto molti libri ed uno importantissimo sulla figura delle Devadasi. E proprio per questo le chiederò cosa l'ha spinta ad affrontare una ricerca proprio sulle Devadasi. Molte artiste in India si sono impegnate nella diffusione di un'idea emancipata circa il ruolo della donna nella società, ispirandosi a figure mitiche come Sita, Ahilya, Draupadi, Savitri, e attraverso la danza e attraverso il teatro superando anche stereotipi tipici di una cultura patriarcale, hanno saputo dare e contribuire a quello che è stata l'emancipazione della donna nella società indiana.
I got the inspiration to study about the women dancers when I first read the inscriptions in the Tanjore temple, that 400 women, their names are engraved there in the year 1010. So when I said to myself, 400 women dancers were employed in this temple, so they played a very important part in the history of my dance. So I must see what they did over time. So that is when I started researching, and I discovered that in India, always women have played a very great part in bhakti. Bhakti is devotion. And women, right through our mythology and history, have been the heroines who have upheld the idea of the human soul, that is Jivatma, always wanting to be one with the Paramatma, that is the divine soul. So even in our mythology, you find all the characters of women are such that they become selfless in love. Their love transcends themselves. And this is what the Devadasi heritage really educated me, because I found that their dance was not merely a seductive or just Shringara alone. It was filled with a certain passion, a passion for the art, a passion towards the divine. That is why even today people like the stories of those women in the Ramayana, like Ahalya or Sita, or other stories like Savitri. But they also like the playful, women who dance around Krishna, the gopis, Radha. So we have a big mix of women. And I find that the dance really depicts women in reality, because they are not one-dimensional. They are multidimensional. They are daughters, they are mothers, but above all, they are also lovers. So all this comes into the dance, and this is what the Devadasis stood for, because they were complete women. They were women of substance, and also they did not deny the physical beauty, the physicality of women, because after all, the human body dances. And it is our imagination that makes the human body even more beautiful when it dances. That is why Shiva himself is Ardhanarishwara, half woman, half man. So you have a complete picture of the beauty of dance in the dance of Shiva.
Thank you very much, really, for this beautiful explanation. Grazie per questa meravigliosa spiegazione che ci dà ancora un invito a studiare la danza indiana e soprattutto la cultura. E quindi sicuramente per tutte le donne sarà anche un regalo queste parole della nostra ospite Lakshmi G. Viswanathan, perché ci fa proprio toccare con mano come già nell'antichità e nelle scritture la femminilità, la donna era intesa in una multidimensione. We hope Mrs. Lakshmi Ji, that we can make again and again interaction with you like we did today. And we thank you very much from our side, from Association ISAS and the Embassy of India, and my also School of Tatak in Italy. I would like to conclude with a sentence that impressed me, reported in your interview. One may find many pearls in the ocean, provided dives deep. Si possono trovare molte perle nell'oceano, a patto di immergersi in profondità. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, Rosella.
Thank you.